Idris Elba, an actor who has struggled all his life to find the perfect role. 25 years of grinding from the bottom. No one knew who he was. Wasting his efforts on mediocre shows like The Wire and Luther. Doing side missions in Marvel and playing a comical warlord in a fantasy movie. Until finally, he found the role he was born to play. This is what the people have been missing. They never understood who he was until now. All those years of voice work paid off. The years of sacrifice, the details of preparation. What his whole journey has come to, you now see before you.
I love Knuckles, he's just like, straight to the point.
Okay, I'm gonna level with you guys. I cannot express how bizarre this show was. I don't know what I just saw. I don't know why this exists. I get that he's a highly popular character from the game, but is a TV show with a low budget that doesn't even make him look polished or remotely real really doing the character justice? Surely a movie would make more sense. I like the Sonic movies, and this spin-off show is written by the same people, but something was off. Maybe it was because you didn't have Sonic and Jim Carrey's excellent portrayal of Dr. Robotnik. Or maybe it was because the new characters were some of the most annoying and idiotic people I've had to endure, purely for the purpose of creating content for my channel, because the views just haven't been good enough recently. So I have to sit here and watch this red alien who's only been half rendered, and after 2 episodes realize that he isn't even the main character of the damn show. We got conned, ladies and gentlemen. If you thought you were going to get full-on action involving Knuckles fighting off aliens and secret agencies, you were dead wrong, because this show is about Wade, the sheriff of Green Hills. The style of the show is very campy, I get this, it's borrowing a lot of various pop culture references, but that doesn't really make any sense when implemented into this narrative. It's supposed to be a comedy, however nothing feels in place, everything looks so awkward. The presentation, the visual look, it feels empty and also lazy. Every sequence is so predictable. You predict in your head what's going to happen and then it actually happens in the show. But it really feels like you're being tortured when they linger on the joke, as if they were expecting this to be the funniest thing you've ever seen. You see, I'm watching this thinking, if I was directing this, I would say cut the second this man started screaming and just say, look, we have an idea, it didn't work, so let's call it a wrap, pack your bags, and never show your face on this earth again. Because we are a bunch of grown adults making content that not even kids would find funny. The 2 agents tracking down Knuckles have zero chemistry. There was nothing shocking or surprising that made them stand out as villains. The only shocking thing about them was seeing Kid Cudi. It was such a random choice. But you know what? He was actually not bad and has some decent comedic delivery. This woman, on the other hand, is dragging the whole show down and is a major factor as to why this show fails. Every line she delivers doesn't feel real. It's just exposition. And she makes it sound so bossy and annoying. I feel bad for the actress because this is clearly a writing problem. They should have just cast someone else. It might be a crazy choice, but hear me out. Because it would actually get more people to watch this show. Kanye West. Him and Kid Cudi have history together, so they would have pretty good chemistry. And this show is already bizarre enough that having Kanye West won't even feel out of place.
There is a bounty out for the guy now, and he is royally screwed. Oh my god, I'm a fugitive. There's a bounty on my head.
Here's how you make this scene better. Instead of having him explain that he has a bounty on his head when the radio already announced this, show both Knuckles and Wade's reaction looking shocked, and immediately cut to the next scene. This instantly improves the comedic aspect by minimizing the dialogue. Instead of explaining, show your reaction through your face instead of your annoying words. Him not saying a word and being in complete shock says a lot more about the situation. So many scenes go on far longer than they need to be. In episode 3, the dinner scene with Knuckles and Wade's family just didn't stop. Nothing was happening in regards to the plot, it was all played out for humour. Except it wasn't funny, and took up a whole episode without any development except for a growing migraine in my head. And it feels so much longer when every joke fails. The sister was just unbearable and childish. Nothing she said was funny, but the mother I didn't mind. Her interactions with Wade and Knuckles were bearable. It's like the villains. One of them is okay and the other is annoying. Same thing with Wade's mother and sister. Like she just stabs her brother with a fork. A middle-aged woman working for the FBI. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I don't condone violence, especially against women, but the way this psycho was acting, she belonged in a mental institute. And that was a good time for Knuckles to use his knuckles, for the greater good.
Little indentations on her shoulders?
Nothing. Definitely not where I hugged her to.
These marks,
They seem to be everywhere.
Okay, I thought this was a PG show. I'm watching this third episode thinking, who on earth is the target audience? You're making sex jokes in a show based on a video game side character that's aimed for kids. I couldn't laugh at this joke, it threw me off. I had to hear it back to confirm that I wasn't some deviant whose mind is only on one thing and one thing only. But no, it wasn't me. It turns out the people who created this show are completely out of their mind. The only reason they could have done this is because the target audience is actually for an older generation who played the game 20 years ago and hold a lot of nostalgia towards this. I mean, that's what I get when I see the intro. It feels like a retro 90s rock and roll adventure. I guess this show is supposed to be nostalgic to people who grew up as kids in the 90s, because if it's not that, then the tone of this show is all over the place. It either wants to be a show about dramatic melancholy about fatherhood and family, or some harmless Tom and Jerry slapstick. They can only choose one, because I don't think the writers have the brain capacity to juggle both of these elements, which is quite evident throughout this show. I do feel as though I've accidentally taken some hallucinogenic drugs at times. I'm watching some scenes with my jaw dropped, in awe at the surreal nature of this show.
We begin our quest.
When I hear
I'm watching a rock opera, and I have no idea why. Again, I really question the demographic audience. Who in the hell is this aimed at? Because now I'm beginning to think it's not aimed at millennials. This is aimed at musical lovers. But what attachment would they have to the Sonic universe? I have to applaud the experimental ambition that the creators have gone for. They're really trying to reach every audience they can, but failing each time. There are moments in the show that are entertaining, although it doesn't last any longer than a minute. Like the duel, that was fun and entertaining, but then it stops being fun. Like the writers had a cool idea in their mind, but they didn't know how they would execute the sequence to make it even better. And again we find ourselves on that acid trip when Wade meets his father, the great bowling champion. And when you think of a middle-aged bowling professional, the physique is typically similar of that to a darts player. People you would see with a beer in one hand and a bowling ball in the other. But this show keeps surprising me in the dumbest way by revealing Wade's bowling dad to be some English Monopoly man, who speaks like he's from the Victorian times. In fact, the final 2 episodes was one big bowling tournament between Wade and his dad. The storyline involving the buyer who wants Knuckles' powers is just a subplot. The main arc was the bowling tournament. They put way more thought and effort into this. You almost forget that this is related to the Sonic universe. The biggest criticism of the Knuckles TV show is the lack of Knuckles. The lack of additional characters from the game and the abundance of human characters was overwhelming. It was like a Transformers movie where the humans just bore the hell out of the story when you just want to see alien cars fight each other. The same applies to this show. The 6 episodes felt like a chore to get through. The pacing dragged from minute 1. The comedy was flat, predictable, and incredibly childish. None of the episodes stand out, at least in a good way. I remember them because of how baffling they were, especially Wade's Monopoly dad and that weird bounty hunter guy. This could have easily been a movie. I don't know why the producers thought doing a 6-episode miniseries was a good idea. You could have crammed all of this into one 90-minute movie, but instead I had to sit through this garbage for give or take 3 hours. 3 hours of nothing. What was the takeaway from this? What was the message? Wade was the one who came out of this show with far more development than Knuckles. We still know very little of Knuckles' past. Instead of wasting time on dinner tables and rock operas, why didn't the writers spend time on the lore and his adventures on his home planet? There was so much material there to work with, and they spent all that money on a bowling tournament. And that means one thing. This show did not have a big budget at all. You could tell that the effects and animation of Knuckles wasn't very believable. The human characters stuffed the whole show because they didn't want to throw money at the effects department. Look, it wasn't the worst thing in the world, but you could really tell how empty the show looked. The final episode had some cool action, it needed more of that, but at that point you could tell the producers were frugal when it came to these situations. It showed a clear lack of ambition from Paramount and showed the dark and greedy side to these studios. Now you can argue that the Sonic movies didn't have much weight to the narrative. The comedy and action was what the audience wanted and they delivered with substantial success. The comedy in Knuckles was weak and vapid, the action was scarce. These are the basic principles required to make this type of show a success. What we got was a bizarre trip that didn't feel real. It was like a dream at times, just a strange sequence of events that defy logic, and as soon as you wake up, you start to forget about what you just experienced. And that's how I felt after watching Knuckles.